Welcome to the introductory training on applying for relief under the Debt Bondage Repair Act, also known as the DBRA. This presentation is designed for both service providers and survivors of human trafficking who seek to repair their credit under the DBRA. This training aims to provide a comprehensive overview of the DBRA relief application process, guiding both service providers and survivors through the necessary steps. In this video, we will break down the DBRA so both survivors and service providers will know how to apply for relief under this act. This video is broken into sections. First up, we'll talk about what the DBRA is and who can get help from it. Then, we'll dive into understanding credit reports, including how to pull the report, read it, and identify the credit history that is eligible for DBRA relief. Next, we'll chat about what documents are needed to apply for DBRA. This includes explaining what the victim determination document is and how to get it. For service providers, we'll explain how to get authorized so that their organizations can offer these VDDs. Then we'll walk through the process of actually submitting the DBRA request. And finally, we'll cover what happens after the DBRA is sent in. CAS has created the Debt Bondage Repair Act guide to accompany this video, providing a more detailed explanation to each of these sections. You can download it in the description of this video. It's available in English and in Spanish thanks to our partners at USCRI. This guide also includes links to other resources that can help you with financial repair. But before we jump in, let's get started with some common terms used in debt bondage repair. These common terms will be used throughout this training and are key concepts in understanding the DBRA. First is adverse information. Adverse or negative information means information that's not good for your credit. It can make your credit score low or make it hard to do things like rent a house or get a credit card. In the DBRA, adverse information can include items on the survivor's report that don't impact their credit but are still a result of the trafficking victimization. Second is blocking. Blocking is when you take the adverse information off your credit report or stop it from being shown to others. The third term is consumer. A consumer is someone who uses financial products or services like checking their credit report. Here, the consumer is the survivor who wants to fix their credit. Next, we have the credit report. A credit report is a statement that has information about a person's credit activity and current credit situation, like a loan payment history or the status of credit accounts. And finally, we have item. An item is each piece of information that is on the credit report. In this first section, we will cover who is eligible for DBRA relief, which items may be blocked from a credit report with DBRA, and important advisement survivors should be aware of before applying for relief. Any survivors who have experienced a severe form of trafficking in persons, as defined in federal law through the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, or TVPA, can apply to block negative credit information with the DBRA. This includes U.S. citizens and immigrants, even ones without immigration status. The DBRA states that any negative or harmful information can be blocked from the survivor's credit report, even if it doesn't directly affect their credit score, so long as it resulted from the trafficking. The regulations of the DBRA refer to these items as adverse information. Adverse information just means the item in the credit report that resulted from being a victim of severe form of trafficking. This may include things like late payments, unpaid loans, evictions, records of coerced debt, bankruptcy, records of being arrested or convicted of a crime, and records of being evicted for not paying rent. So what are some things survivors should know before filing for relief under the DBRA? To start, survivors should be informed that removing certain items from their credit report could result in the removal of their credit history. A credit history is a record of how a consumer has managed to repay their debts over time. According to NerdWallet, credit history is crucial because it allows lenders, employers, and landlords to track a consumer's credit handling record. Longer credit histories typically have a positive impact on credit scores. However, if a survivor receives relief through the DBRA, removing specific items may significantly shorten or entirely erase their credit history, consequently affecting their credit score. Therefore, it's important to utilize free tools such as Credit Karma's or TransUnion's Credit Score Simulator, which can help survivors simulate the impact of removing certain items. The other thing for survivors to be informed of is that while the negative information may be removed from their credit report, the underlying debts will continue to exist. Removing adverse information from credit reports does not absolve individuals of their debts. If a survivor has a debt, please refer to the Center for Survivor Agency and Justice's Compendium on Coerced Debt, especially Part 4 Legal Strategies to Address Coerced Debt, which is linked in the description. Before we dive into the specifics of the DBRA, we want to provide a high-level overview of how to pull and review your credit report. Consumers have the right to request one free copy of their credit reports each year. Survivors can request theirs by visiting annualcreditreport.com. This website provides reports from the three major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. You can also request these reports over the phone or by mail. On the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau website, you can find more information on how to obtain additional free reports, or if you need to access reports from a specific consumer reporting agency that is not among the three major bureaus. The credit report consists of personal information, accounts, collections, public records, credit inquiries, and medical information. In this video, we won't go into detail about reading your report. However, we'll share some resources in the video description. The key sections to review for the DBRA are the Accounts, Negative Information, and Inquiries section. The Account section lists all active accounts with details like creditor name, account number, opening date, payment status, account type like individual, joint, or authorized user, and credit limit. Survivors should check for any issues like late payments or closed accounts due to non-payment. The Negative Information section will list accounts that haven't been paid, collections, or bankruptcies. The Inquiries section shows when someone checked the consumer's credit, like when they applied for new credit, increased their credit limit, or applied for housing or utilities. There are two types of inquiries: hard, when a creditor checks the consumer's credit with permission, and soft, when the consumer checks their own credit or a potential creditor checks the consumer's credit to see if they want to send them a promotional offer. These three sections are the sections that likely will have the adverse information that comes as a direct result from being a trafficking victim. Survivors should look for items that fall within the time frame of their trafficking victimization, items that were shared with or controlled by the trafficker, accounts that are unfamiliar and not recognizable, items that appeared after the survivor escaped from the trafficking situation that resulted from the victimization, and accuracy in names and addresses associated with each account. In this section, we will discuss what you need to gather to start the DBRA process. Each credit bureau has specific requirements to start the DBRA process detailed in the Debt Bondage Repair Act guide. First, each bureau needs proof of identity, usually a government-issued ID like a state ID, passport, or driver's license. Additionally, TransUnion provides a phone number to verify the survivor's identity if they cannot provide any documentation. Experian also requires a utility bill, bank statement, or insurance statement showing the survivor's current name, mailing address, and issue date. At the time of this video, Equifax requires proof of identity from the attorney or victim assistant advocate helping the survivor, along with documentation showing the survivor's authorization for them to act on their behalf. Survivors will also need a victim determination document, or VDD. A victim determination document is an official determination stating that a consumer is a victim of trafficking and eligible for relief under the DBRA. The types of documents that can be considered a VDD can be any one of the following documents. Documents from a federal, state, local, or tribal government, like a T visa approval notice, certification letter, or vacatur order, for example. Documentation from a non-governmental agency like a nonprofit, also known as an NGO, or a member of a human trafficking task force authorized by a governmental agency to determine who is a trafficking victim. This could be in the form of a letter to the credit bureaus. A signed statement by the survivor affirming their trafficking victim status, signed by an authorized NGO, a member of a human trafficking task force, or a governmental agency at the federal, state, local, or tribal level. A more extensive list of example documents are in the CAST guide under the section Victim Determination Document. If a survivor lacks government documents like a T visa approval notice, certification letter, or vacatur order, they should contact an NGO or nonprofit for support in obtaining a letter endorsing their DBRA relief request. In the CAST guide, we provide links to lists of organizations that work with survivors of trafficking and who may be authorized to provide a VDD. However, as of the time of recording this video, few NGO agencies are authorized to issue these letters or to endorse a survivor's statement. If you are a survivor watching this and approach a nonprofit unfamiliar with the DBRA, you can offer them the CAST guide on DBRA, which includes a section for service providers explaining how they can become authorized. Survivors and practitioners should exercise caution before involving law enforcement in the credit repair process, especially if the survivor has no prior legal interactions. While law enforcement and government agencies can provide a VDD or endorse a survivor's statement, it's crucial to vet them to ensure they won't use the survivor's information without consent to initiate an investigation. It's also essential to note that the survivor's information may not be confidential or privileged when shared with law enforcement or government agencies, potentially risking disclosure to the perpetrator. If the survivor chooses to use a survivor self-attestation as evidence, remember it doesn't have to be a detailed statement explaining everything about the trafficking victimization. The Fair Credit Reporting Act regulations and statutes include a sample statement, which is shown on the slide and is very simple. Our CAST guide offers a sample attestation for survivors to download and use that is appropriately formatted for submission. It's important to note that this self-attestation must be signed by an authorized non-governmental agency, human trafficking task force member, or government agency before sending it to a credit bureau. Even if a survivor wants to handle it independently, they still need to have it signed by an authorized agency. Service providers and government agencies should be aware that survivors may bring these self-attestations to them and should have policies in place to sign these statements or provide VDDs generously, even if the survivor isn't seeking additional services. For service providers seeking authorization, our guide includes information on requirements to become authorized and a sample authorization letter. We also offer guidance and a sample letter to help law enforcement and government agencies authorize NGOs to issue VDDs. Furthermore, grantees funded by the Office of Trafficking in Persons, or OTIP, have blanket authorization to issue VDDs. We encourage law enforcement and government agencies to engage with NGOs in this authorization process. These specialized NGOs have professionals trained in conducting comprehensive trafficking assessments that encompass not only the standard assessment, but also take into consideration services for the survivor's physical, emotional, and psychological well-being. NGOs also have a range of privacy and privilege protections to ensure the confidentiality and security of the survivor information. Once the survivor has gathered all the necessary documentation, they can proceed to submit a request to the credit bureaus. The submission process is very straightforward compared to other forms of relief. Survivors are only required to submit the VDD, an identity document, and a letter requesting removal of the adverse information. Each credit reporting bureau requires a letter that identifies the negative information that should be blocked from the credit report. The letters are required to 1. Identify each item of adverse information, and 2. Provide a consumer's preferred method of contact so that the consumer reporting agency can contact the survivor. In our guide, CAS has provided a sample downloadable submission letter that is properly formatted and addressed for all 3 major credit bureaus. The letter does not need to include any detailed information about the trafficking victimization, including no requirement for dates of the victimization. Rather, the regulations only require a table listing the creditor name, account number, type of item, date the account was opened, and date the account was closed or paid. So what happens after the request is submitted? The regulations specify specific timeframes within which the consumer reporting agencies must respond after receiving a request for blocking. The chart on this slide outlines that timeline. In 4 business days after submission, the agency is required to block the reporting of any adverse information identified by the survivor. In 5 business days, the agency must notify a consumer if additional information is needed to complete the submission and attempt to resolve any deficiency in the consumer's submission. By 25 business days, the agency must make a final determination on the consumer's request. 5 business days after the final determination, the agency is required to provide a written or electronic notice of actions they performed in response to the request. If the request is approved, the consumer reporting agency must provide written notice within 5 business days of their final determination. The notice of the approval must contain 1. A statement that the review is complete, 2. A statement explaining the outcome, 3. Provide a new free credit report to the consumer with the revised information, and 4. A description of the procedure used to make the final determination. Consumer reporting agencies are only allowed to deny requests to block information in the following 3 circumstances. 1. If they are unable to confirm the identity of the consumer or the consumer's representative. 2. If the consumer is unable to provide a victim determination document. Or 3. If the consumer reporting agency cannot properly identify the adverse items. Consumer reporting agencies cannot deny requests based on the validity of the circumstances outlined in the trafficking documentation or validity of the trafficking victimization. They can only deny based on these 3 circumstances. And those are the basics for applying for relief under the Debt Bondage Repair Act. Don't forget to download the complete Debt Bondage Repair Act guide for more detailed information and samples. We will regularly update the guide with the most up-to-date information. Also, check the description of the video on YouTube for more helpful links.